As a longtime fan of racing games, it's my opinion that the genre just isn't what it once was. Now don't get me wrong, there are some truly spectacular racing titles that have been released within the past decade or so, but it just feels like everything peaked at maybe the PS2 era of gaming. I mean, we had the Burnout titles, the Need for Speed Underground series, Midnight Club, Juiced, and of course, the Gran Turismo franchise was still running strong. And there were many lesser known and equally fun titles on the market, such as 2004's Flatout, a game that puts heavy emphasis on destruction and chaos because not only could you obliterate your car, but also the driver. Smash into something hard enough and he'll go flying through the windshield and straight into whatever lies ahead. Developers Bugbear Entertainment took this a step further and designed mini-games around this mechanic, using the driver to perform the high jump or as a human bowling ball, or even a dart. And along with these special events, players could partake in races and demolition derbies, both just as equally destructive. While Flatout 2 was a nice way to expand on the first title, the rest of the sequels seemed to fade into obscurity. The team that made the first 3 games in the series would go on to create Wreckfest in 2018, a fantastic title that takes a more serious approach to the Flatout concept. Fast forward to the spring of 2024, I'm browsing the Xbox Marketplace and come across a racing game called Trailout. I decided to watch the trailer, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, wow, this looks just like Flatout. That very same morning, I purchased, downloaded, and installed the game, and I've been playing it ever since. So let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the chaos that is Trailout. Now, right off the bat, I thought that maybe the game was developed by the same team that did the first few Flatout titles, but this is not the case. This developer goes by the name Good Boys, a small team of only 4, based out of Ukraine. I didn't find a whole lot of information on them, but it does appear that this might be their first title. Either way, it's safe to say, and I'm sure you'll agree, you can call this an homage or a spiritual successor. As the game begins, you're thrust straight into the story, which introduces the Trailout Festival and all of its competitors, the very same group of racers who will become your main rivals throughout the game. Right away, I have to point out that Big Cheese is obviously a Big Smoke ripoff, and even more hilarious is how out of place the voice acting feels for the character.
Haha, you got a problem with girls. Maybe you should grow some hair on your matchstick hat. Or is your man in the tank top enough for you? Your damn license is in the car!
But you'll quickly find that all of the cutscenes are pretty funny and bizarre, almost certainly by accident. There are a few tutorial races to get you started, but there's really not a lot to take in when it comes to gameplay. It's an arcade-style game engine with responsive steering, nitrous that can be earned by crashing into things, and a damage meter that leads to a massive explosion once depleted. And just like the game that clearly inspired Trailout, players can be launched from vehicles during heavy collisions. This, of course, is hilarious. You'll take control of Mihalic as you rise through the ranks of the Trailout Festival. There are multiple events that need to be completed before facing off against each boss, with money and fans being earned along the way. Money can purchase things like vehicles, vehicle upgrades, garage upgrades, and different outfits. Fans are needed to progress through the story mode in addition to unlocking new vehicles, upgrades, and game modes. The diversity in these game modes keeps this one interesting, because in addition to standard races where your goal is to simply finish the race in the highest position possible, there's also derby matches, where you'll either need to earn points by smashing into opponents to determine your ranking, or be the last driver standing. Or escape mode, where a bomber plane circles around the racers high above, occasionally sending rockets plummeting towards the poor soul in last place, until there's only one left standing. This mode can be absolutely stressful, especially when you're watching that timer tick down and you just can't get out of that last position. There's also monoclass races where every participant is given the same vehicle, and cross mode, which are races that take place on smaller courses that intersect with each other. As you'd imagine, this can lead to some pretty incredible crashes. There are time trial courses where you're given a specific vehicle and need to beat a target time. These require some memorization of the tracks, as every little second you can shave off your time here is critical for that first place gold trophy. There's even this tag mode where a random player is literally affixated with a ticking time bomb, with the bomb being passed off to others by way of contact. The person in possession of the bomb when the timer hits 0, well, you guessed it. Best to just stay clear of everybody here in this mode. Another one of the rather unique modes is Hunter. It's a basic game of cops and robbers. That is, if cops had rockets and dropped bombs. You can also lay down spike strips and use good old crashes to eliminate the baddies. While these modes are all very fun and I found myself wanting to play each and every one of them, my main complaint would be the inconsistencies with difficulty. The monoclass races are particularly easy with little skill needed to stay in first place, while other modes such as Escape or those smaller tracks of the cross modes were almost rage quit worthy. There were a few cross races that literally took me upwards of 20 times each to complete. Just like Flatout, this one also features mini games like bowling, golf, darts, billiards, and demolition. If you've ever wanted to eject a driver from a moving vehicle and send him flying into a building, only to see it come crumbling down on top of him, you've come to the right place. These are all fun, but it isn't really the fun that makes me come back to these minigames over and over again, because you see, while races typically earn you a few $1,000s for, let's say, 5-6 minutes of your time, you can hop into a game of bowling and earn up to $24K in around a minute or so. Needless to say, this is where you'll want to grind for cash and fans. And why grind for cash? Well, you'll need a good variety of cars to succeed in Flatout. Heading into a derby, you'll want something strong. Why not a truck? Hell, take a tank. Racing on tarmac? Well, the F1 should do you just fine. Off-road? Grab a monster truck, buddy. You see, you'll constantly need to add cars to your garage in a strategic manner as the mode progresses, and while cars may appear to be cheap initially, it's all of the required parts that can add up, because every car needs to be built from the ground up, and many feature multiple levels of upgrades. Upgrades that need to also be unlocked by earning specific numbers of fans. Not to mention, all of that awesome destruction that happens during races needs to be fixed afterwards, so you'll constantly be spending cash on repairs as well. In addition, there are multiple classes of cars, with class restrictions in most races, so even if you have the strongest truck in the game, it might not be eligible for that next derby on your list. Fortunately, the selection here is vast and diverse, everything from old Soviet-era buckets to classic American muscle and a wide variety of newer model cars and trucks. And then there is the bizarre and wacky, such as golf carts or go-karts, cleverly named MAR-10, and those little vintage kids' cars that were popular back in the 1960s. But this is what helps add to the replay value here, for me at least. And as you stack up your collection of fine automobiles, you'll need to eventually upgrade your garage, giving Mihalic more storage for said vehicles. You'll also earn money here and there from fan donations through your phone. But don't forget to collect it like I did, because it then took me forever to redeem it all. One donation at a time. Your phone is also where you can check out and collect your achievements, as well as accept different challenges that can earn additional cash. So yes, you'll need to earn a bunch of money, but it never feels like there's a shortage of it. And there's no shortage of destruction either, because each and every track and arena is comprised of many structures to plow through, explosives to ignite, pedestrians to mow down, jumps to send you soaring, and then some, and so on. Taking shortcuts through shopping malls, cutting corners into storefronts, and leveling housing developments are just a few of the extraordinary events that'll unfold during a race. And these environments are fantastic, some of them taking me right back to racing games of old like the Cruisin' series, San Francisco Rush, and the Burnout series, just to name a few. From racing through the canals of LA to the dark winter wonderlands up north and the jungles of Madagascar. This is one aspect of racing games that I think is missing in most current era titles: geographical diversity. Sure, it's great to have a large open world concept to race in, but I miss being thrown around different continents from race to race. And this expands into the boss battle portion of the game as well, with each opponent representing a unique location. Boomer, a beer-drinking good old boy, calls the farm his home, while Sonia is part of San Francisco's police department. Ivan hails from Russia, and the battle against Yuji takes place atop a skyscraper. And remember Big Cheese? Well, his home turf looks an awful lot like Grove Street, if you ask me. These matchups consist of a one-on-one race and a one-on-one derby. And by one-on-one, I mean that you'll be all by your lonesome, but your opponent will have reinforcements. Yes, they're unfair, but surprisingly beatable. The races are rather short, consisting of a linear point A to B style shootout, and often presents higher levels of difficulty thanks to things like barriers, booby traps, and the aforementioned added enemy vehicles. The derby matchups, however, are a bit easier, given the fact you've selected a strong enough vehicle for the job. And if all else fails, just grab that tank for an unfair advantage. Once you beat an opponent, you'll unlock his or her vehicles for purchase, as well as climb up a rank in the leaderboards. The conclusion of the mode sees you take on the first place opponent known as Frank Woods, with a dramatic final showdown. And while I won't spoil the ending for those that intend on playing the game, I will add that there are two different outcomes: a good ending and a bad ending. And you'll need to see both to unlock all achievements in the game. A task that, in my opinion, is worth it because it does reward the player with hidden vehicles. The story itself is simple enough, yet fun to follow, especially for the unintentional comedic aspect. I mean, these cutscenes are gold.
I think you picked the wrong hangaboos. For enjoyers of yellow cars, this is a dump.
I'm in the dump anyway. No, this will be your last festival, Mikhailych.
I think that every time I fly out the window.
Well, I'm just warning you and advise you to get out of the way. Good luck.
I found Mikhailych to be a pretty likable character, and though we don't have the option to create our own racer from scratch, the multiple outfits give a nice feel of diversity and customization. The other characters in the game are far from simple or boring, and clearly many of them are inspired by other source material, like this guy here. In addition to the main mode of the game, you can venture into free play, where you can select from any event and track that you've unlocked, and this mode also lets you earn cash and fans, which carries over into the story mode. There's also the Joker's Roulette mode, a randomized event with a random vehicle and track as well. These are fun to sort of mix things up and possibly get a chance to drive some vehicles that you might not have access to yet. There's also the completely out-of-place Dead Out side quest, which has you finding and defeating zombies and bosses after the Flatout festival is hit with an apocalyptic breakout. This one allows the players to leave their vehicle and battle on foot while collecting cash and weapon upgrades. It all feels sort of Fortnite-ish, sort of, and while I can appreciate its inclusion, it just wasn't for me. Visually, there's nothing groundbreaking here, but I do have to say, for an indie title with a small dev team, it's definitely on the better looking end of the spectrum. Cars are very detailed with realistic damage models, the levels are filled with all sorts of little details, and all of those explosions do a great job of adding to the presentation. There's a bit of delay with texture loading here and there, and things can slow down when the action is thick. Cutscenes also look a bit stiff, and the animations don't always match the dialogue, but it's nothing that would sway me from playing the game. I did experience a few strange bugs during my time with Flatout, but surprisingly only one occurred during gameplay. A rhino had spawned into an opponent's vehicle, causing all sorts of chaos and leading to an instant explosion for that driver. I very much enjoyed it. Menus would sometimes freeze on me, and then there was this, which I'm not really sure what was going on, but the same cutscene kept playing in the background of my menus. I had to completely exit the game to fix it. Now obviously nobody wants to see bugs in their game, but I've seen worse from recent big budget titles. I hate to say we're kind of used to it these days, but we're kind of used to it these days. The soundtrack sort of gives me SmackDown vs. Raw vibes, as heavy guitar-driven rock songs make up most of the listening experience, with titles provided by OnLap, Nick Ira, and New Vegas. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on these artists, but I did see that New Vegas just recently broke up, and that's a shame because I rather enjoy the songs here. I found myself starting to sing along to the lyrics the more and more that I played the game. And with rock music becoming less and less mainstream in recent years, it's nice to hear a game featuring the genre exclusively. Other sounds like crashes, engines, and explosions are all rather spot on and really add to the chaotic experience. And then there are those cutscenes, sometimes missing dialogue that is clearly captioned on screen. Often the menu music decides to play about twice as loud than other times, which can be a bit jarring, especially if you have a surround sound system with a woofer, but that was really my only complaint when it comes to the sound. A game like Flatout won't appeal to everybody. It's missing some of the things that we've become accustomed to with current era racers, such as an extensive career mode and online multiplayer. Now there is a split screen mode, which I do enjoy, but I'm not sure many utilize local multiplayer much these days. It's definitely a throwback to many older games and movies, loaded with references left and right, which is part of the charm here for me personally. I love a game that you can jump into quickly, have a few races, and shut off, because honestly I just don't have the time that I used to for gaming. With plenty of cars, tracks, game modes, and a decent length story, I feel like this one offers the perfect amount of content to justify the price. This one can be found for around $30, sometimes even dropping to $20 during sales. As a collector, I do wish there was a physical release, but nevertheless, it's well worth the purchase if you have the same nostalgia that I do for arcade racers. I'm not sure what the future holds for Flatout, but I'd love to see either a sequel or even just some future DLC. Thanks to all of you that watched the video here today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the content, I ask that you please like, comment, and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And until next time, of course, as always, take care, folks.